Have you ever scrolled past a post that felt too specific? A missed connection that sounds like it's written for you. An odd job that pays well but explains very little. A message that feels less like an invitation and more like a test. So take a breath, lower the volume on everything else, and listen closely. Because some posts aren't looking for help. They're looking for you. Welcome to Tales Atelier.
Have you ever agreed to something just because the money felt too easy? I found a listing late one night while scrolling Craigslist with a half-empty beer and a sense of dread I couldn't name. Night watcher needed minimal duties, $200 per night. Must stay awake. Must remain seated in hallway chair. Text updates only, no calls. Do not enter rooms. It sounded like a scam or a joke or something else entirely, but I was behind on rent. My fridge had half a jar of mustard and a single egg. The listing had no contact name, just a number and an address. I texted, "Is this still available?" The reply came instantly, "Yes. Can you start tonight?" The townhouse was wedged between a vape store and a closed-down optician's office. One of those narrow urban houses with thin staircases and bad lighting. A man answered the door before I knocked. Mid-30s, pale, hair buzzed short. Dressed like someone who only owned dark colors.
Are you Brandon?
He asked. I wasn't, but I nodded. He stepped aside without another word. The air inside was still and smelled like overripe lemons.
You'll sit there,
he said, pointing to a plastic chair facing a long, dim hallway.
Text me every 30 minutes. Don't move. Don't go into any rooms.
I frowned. What am I watching for? He didn't answer, just disappeared into one of the rooms at the far end and closed the door behind him. The hallway was unnaturally narrow. 5 doors all closed except the last one, which had been left open just a crack. I sat down. The chair creaked under me, and I realized the cushion was slightly warm. Someone had been here recently. Every light in the house was yellowish and low, like old bulbs that had dimmed with age. There were no paintings, no photos, no sound. I texted him. Sitting in the chair now. All good so far. He replied immediately.
Stay in the chair, no matter what you hear.
I reread it 3 times. What does he mean what I hear? This wasn't in the listing. The first half hour passed slowly. I tried to scroll my phone, but the signal was weak. The house creaked every so often, like all old houses do. But then, I heard something new. A soft shuffle, like a sock sliding across wood. It came from behind one of the doors. I texted again. Heard something, near middle door. Do you want me to check? No response. Then, a new message.
Just stay seated. You're doing fine.
I stared down the hallway. All doors remained shut. The last one still ajar, but seemed a little wider now. But, maybe it was just my imagination. Another hour passed. I started counting the knots in the wood floor to stay awake. Somewhere around the 64th knot, my phone buzzed again.
Don't look at the end of the hallway. Just keep facing forward.
I froze. I hadn't texted anything. The message wasn't in response to anything I'd said. My throat dried out. I was facing forward. The hallway was forward. I typed back, trembling. What do you mean? That is the hallway forward. A pause, then a reply.
Then whatever you are seeing, it isn't real. Don't respond to it.
That's when I saw it. A shape at the far end, just past the last open door. A human outline, unmoving, barely visible in the shadows, but wrong somehow. It was tall, or at least elongated, like someone standing tiptoe in the dark. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. It's still there. I texted him again. Someone's here. End of hallway. He replied,
That's not someone. Just stay calm. Don't leave the chair.
I stared harder. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. But the hallway felt shorter now, like it was creeping toward me, inch by inch. I couldn't keep still. I stood, and as soon as I did, the lights dimmed further, like the house disapproved. My phone vibrated violently.
Why did you get up?
I nearly dropped it. Another message came.
Get back in the chair now.
But I was already stepping forward. The floor creaked under my weight. 4 steps in, I noticed something strange. The hallway carpet wasn't flat. It had small depressions, like footsteps, heading away from me. Not toward the back room, but into the wall. I looked up. The shape was gone. The last door now is wide open. The room beyond looked empty. A twin bed, no windows. Just stillness. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. But my phone vibrated again.
Leave the door alone. It remembers faces. If it sees yours, it won't forget.
I backed up fast, heart thudding. Sat back in the chair like it was a lifeline. The hallway felt colder now. My breath came out in clouds. There was no heating in the house. For the next 10 minutes, nothing happened. No new messages, no more movement. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wanted to leave, badly. But the door was behind me. To reach it, I'd have to turn my back on the hallway. On all 5 doors. And I couldn't bring myself to do that. Another buzz.
Shift is over in 10. Do not leave until I say so.
I texted back, desperate. What the hell is this job? A full minute passed, then...
You're not watching the hallway. You're being watched in it. Sit still.
My ears rang, my spine felt locked. Then I heard a creak behind me, close, too close. Something warm hovered by my neck. A breath. I stayed frozen. Then, one final buzz.
Don't react. It's testing if you'll run.
The air behind me shifted. I held my breath until I almost passed out. When I blinked again, the hallway was empty. The door at the end closed. Final message of the night.
You did good. Payment sent. If you return, the rules will change.
And just like that, my shift was over. But I already knew. Something in that house had learned my name. Would you have stayed if someone told you not to look at something? I told myself I wouldn't go back. No amount of desperation or unpaid bills was worth the way that house felt. Like the walls were listening. Like the air was waiting for me to slip. But the next night, right after dinner, if you can call microwaved noodles dinner, the same anonymous number texted me.
Same time tonight? Higher pay. $300.
I stared at my phone too long. I should have blocked the number, thrown the phone, done literally anything except what I did. I typed, "What changed?" Immediate reply.
It's more active.
That should have been the end of it. But somehow that made the money feel like danger pay. And danger pay felt reasonable. I told myself I'd last an hour. 2 at most. Then I grabbed my jacket. The street was even quieter tonight. Fog pulled low, swallowing the curb, muffling the world. The door opened before I knocked, just like last time, but tonight, the man didn't meet my eyes. He looked exhausted, trembling.
You sit.
He rasped, gesturing to the same chair.
Same rules. No matter what you hear, don't speak to it.
Don't speak to what? He didn't answer. He just slipped into the far room again and shut the door. I never heard his footsteps. Not on the wood floor, not anywhere. It was like he dissolved into the house. I sat. The chair was cold tonight. Ice cold, like no one had sat there in hours. But something about the cushion still felt shaped, like it remembered someone. The first 20 minutes were quiet. Way too quiet. Even house breathe. Pipes shift, floors settle. Fridges hum. But this house held its breath. It waited. When my phone buzzed, the sudden sound nearly made me jump out of the chair.
Don't look at the end.
There were no footsteps, no whispers, nothing to trigger that message. But the warning still pricked under my skin. I forced myself to stare straight ahead at the floorboards. At the knots I counted last time. 64 knots again, except the pattern seemed different. Subtly rearranged like the hallway's wood floor wasn't fixed in place. Another buzz.
You're doing well. Don't answer if it speaks.
What does he mean by it? My mouth dried. I didn't hear it at first. It was soft, so soft, I thought it was my imagination. A slow shuffling, fabric brushing wood. Then, "Are you the watcher tonight?" The voice was thin, like air passing through teeth. It came from the room, whose door had been cracked open the night before. Now it was closed. I gripped the chair arms so tightly, my knuckles hurt. Then the voice came again, closer this time. "You hear me, don't you?" I squeezed my eyes shut. My phone buzzed.
Do not speak to it. Do not acknowledge it.
I didn't move, not even to breathe. Minutes dragged, the voice eventually faded, replaced by a deep silence, but not empty silence. This one felt aware. My pulse slowed just enough for me to think clearly again, and the first thought I had was the one I'd been avoiding since last night. The homeowner never actually goes to the back room. He just disappears into it, completely. And I hadn't heard a single sound from behind that door. Not last night, not tonight. I needed answers. Needed to know if he was actually there. So I stood slowly, quietly, every nerve screaming. My phone buzzed, almost as if the house tattled on me.
Sit down.
I didn't. The hallway felt tighter when I stepped into it, like the walls squeezed in a fraction of an inch. Shadows deepened. Cold air crawled up my arms. I moved toward the back room. The door was plain, featureless. No nameplate, no handle shine, just wood. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. No breathing, no movement. Just silence. Not the silence of a person sleeping. The silence of absence. I grabbed the doorknob. It felt warm. Human warm. My heart lurched. I twisted, locked. But the warmth didn't fade. It pulsed. I stepped back, breathing hard. That door wasn't just locked. Something was behind it. Leaned against it, or waiting. As I turned to retreat back to the chair, something caught my eye. A small object, wedged between the hallway baseboard and wall. A baby monitor. The kind used to listen to infants. Except the cord was cut, completely severed. I picked it up. The speaker hissed with static, even when unplugged. Then, a whisper through it. "You shouldn't be walking." I nearly threw the monitor. The whisper wasn't from the room. It wasn't from the hallway. It was from inside the monitor itself. I staggered back to the chair, hands shaking uncontrollably. Before I even sat, my phone buzzed.
Stop picking things up. Stay still.
I typed furiously. "Who is it?" He didn't reply, not immediately. Just a long, terrifying 3 minutes of silence, then...
It uses memory. It uses attention. If you give either, it grows. Don't look into the room again.
I swallowed hard and lifted my eyes. The room door was now slightly open again. I swear, it hadn't been like that a second ago. Something shifted inside. A soft scrape like bare feet dragging across wood. I couldn't take it anymore. The fear became too dense, too oppressive. I felt like a bug pinned under a microscope. I texted him. "I'm done. I'm leaving." The reply was instant.
If you step off that floor, you won't be alone.
Another message layered on top of it before I could respond.
It doesn't like when watchers quit early.
Then a third message from an unknown number. "Get out." My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He's not in the house. The hallway lights flickered violently. Shadows stretched toward me like they had weight. And behind me, slow, deliberate footsteps approached, heavy enough to shake the air. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body went rigid, locked between terror and instinct. The footsteps stopped, just inches behind me. Too close. Far too close for any human. My phone buzzed one final time. The sender was the same unknown number. If you can feel it breathing, don't run yet. I could feel the warm pressure of breath at the back of my neck. Slow, rhythmic, wrong. Another message, same number. Wait for it to step back, then move. Time slowed, air tightened, and then a single step backward. Soft, wet, like something lifting itself off me. I bolted, didn't look back, didn't care if the doors opened or the walls shifted. I tore through the hallway, slammed into the front door, and stumbled out into the cold night air. When I finally dared to look back, the house was completely dark, silent. But, I swear, I saw a figure standing in the hallway, just between the shadows, watching me through the barely open door. My phone vibrated, one last time.
Shift over.
If a house watches you back, at what point do you run? I didn't sleep the night. I ran out of that house. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that breath on my neck again. Warm, too slow, too aware. I blocked the number, deleted the messages, told myself it was over. But the next evening, just as the sun dipped behind the buildings, my phone lit up with a notification, unknown number.
You need to talk to me.
My stomach dropped. I didn't answer. 30 seconds later.
I'm the real owner of that house.
Another 10 seconds.
And you're in danger.
I shouldn't have read it. I shouldn't have cared. But something in me needed answers, needed closure, or sanity, or proof that I wasn't losing my mind. So I typed back. Then who hired me? I agreed to meet him. We met in the parking lot of an abandoned strip mall. the kind with graffitied windows and broken lights buzzing overhead. He looked nothing like the man from the townhouse. This guy was older, bearded, shaking so badly he couldn't hold his phone still.
That's not me texting you. Hasn't been me for a long time.
He explained everything in clipped, terrified fragments. He hadn't lived in the house for 3 weeks. He'd left because it wasn't safe. He'd tried to call the police. They found nothing. Tried to hire contractors. None stayed longer than an hour. He swallowed hard.
The house doesn't like being empty.
I felt a cold spike at the base of my spine. What was in the hallway? He shook his head violently.
You weren't watching anything. It was watching you.
He told me the first incident happened months ago. He'd come home from a work trip and found the hallway chair pulled into the center, facing the rooms. He lived alone. At night, he'd hear footsteps behind him, but only when he was still. If he turned, nothing. But if he stayed facing forward, the footsteps grew closer. Then came the voices. Thin, searching, always asking who he was.
They learn from attention. They want memory, recognition. Once you look at them, once you acknowledge them, they don't let go.
My throat tightened. So why the Craigslist listing? He looked away in shame.
I hoped someone could sit there long enough for it to get bored of me.
I stepped back. You used us as shields. He didn't deny it. Then who opened the door for me? I asked. He rubbed his face.
I don't know. But it wasn't me. And it wasn't human.
He handed me something. A small black object. A baby monitor. Just like the one I'd found in the hallway. Except this one still had its cord.
I left these in the house so I could hear what was happening. But it learned to speak through them. Learned my voice.
My skin crawled. The messages. The warnings. The rules. Some had come too fast to be human. Some too slow, like something thinking before imitating. So the thing inside can text. He nodded.
It can do anything that involves watching.
Chill rippled down my arms. Watching, that was the whole job. Not guarding, not being observed. I backed away from him. We're done. I'm not going near that place again. He reached out, desperate.
You don't understand. Once it sees you, it doesn't stop.
My voice cracked. I didn't look directly at it. He hesitated.
That isn't what it sees.
A gust of cold air ripped through the parking lot, carrying a faint smell. Something sour like damp lemons. The same smell from the hallway. We both turned. Nothing was there. But the shadows around the dumpster looked thicker. Pulled inward. Something shifted inside them. Slow, confident. Then the owner's face went pale.
It followed you.
I didn't wait to ask how or why. I ran. But halfway across the lot, my phone buzzed. Not in my pocket, in my hand, screen lit. New message. The name field was blank. The text wasn't. You left your shift early. I nearly dropped the phone. Another buzz. You didn't say goodbye. The air behind me grew warm, too warm for the cold night. I turned, just enough to see a stretched shadow on the pavement. Mine. And another towering over it. The owner shouted.
Don't turn around.
Too late. My breath froze, mid-inhale. I didn't see a face. Not clearly, not the way you'd see a person. But there was an outline, tall, impossibly thin, like a human shape stretched, until it forgot its original proportions. It flickered in the corner of my eye, always half hidden, always half present. Every time I tried to focus on it, my vision blurred, like my brain refused to register its shape correctly, like it was editing itself around my perception. The owner grabbed my wrist.
We have to go back.
I jerked away. Why would we go back? He shook me, fear cracking his voice.
Because it stays with whoever it last watched. If we put the chair back, if you sit, maybe it'll anchor again.
No, I whispered. I'm not going back in that house. My phone buzzed. Yes, you are. I wanted to scream. We argued, frantic, both of us half in shock. But the thing behind me didn't argue, it just waited, breathing slowly, as if curious how long we'd take to make the wrong decision. The owner stepped closer, whispering rapidly.
It doesn't kill. It attaches. It follows. But it needs the hallway, needs the doors, needs someone sitting between them.
I shook my head, over and over. No, no, no. Then, my phone vibrated again. But this time, the screen didn't show a text, it showed a live feed, a video. The hallway, the doors, the chair, and the caption beneath it, typed by something that wasn't human. Take your seat. The camera panned slowly, like a head tilting. Not at the doors, at the front door of the house. Waiting. We drove back. I don't know why. I think fear makes you obey in the worst ways. The owner wouldn't step inside. He waited outside the gate, hands over his ears, like he was terrified of hearing something. I opened the door. The house was pitch black, absolutely still. Yet the chair was perfectly centered in the hallway, lit by a single bulb above it, as if the house was spotlighting my role. My phone buzzed with one final message. We've been waiting. I stepped forward, slowly, heart battering my ribs. The doors trembled, softly, like they were inhaling. Every instinct screamed to run. But the shadow behind me blocked the exit with its presence alone. I sat. The chair groaned under my weight, the bulb buzzed loudly overhead, and the doors began to open. They opened one by one, not fast, deliberately, as if something behind each door needed time to remember how to move. Warm air poured from the first room, cold air from the second, whispers from the third, a soft thud from the fourth, and the last door stayed closed. I stared straight ahead, every muscle trembling. The hallway breathed with me, sank with me, observed me. Then finally, the last door clicked. Not open, just unlocked. A signal, a reminder. My phone buzzed. I looked down, one final message. Good. You're ours now. The bulb went out. The door stood open around me, shapes shifting in the dark, waiting for me to see them. And I realized, with a cold, sinking certainty, that the house hadn't hired me to watch anything. It had hired me to stay, to sit, to be the center of its attention, its anchor, its mirror, its memory. And as the darkness pressed closer, warm and cold and whispering in my ears, I understood the truth. A house doesn't need walls to trap you.
Have you ever wondered how many people notice you, without you ever noticing them back? Not in a dramatic way, not staring or following, just registering you, filing you away. I take the same train every night after work. Same line, same carriage if I can help it. I stand near the middle doors. One hand on the pole, the other holding my phone like a shield. Hair tied back. Jacket zipped. I've learned how to disappear in public. How to look unremarkable enough that no one remembers you later. That night didn't feel special. Fluorescent lights humming. The floor vibrating through my shoes. The smell of metal and recycled air. People scrolling, swaying, waiting. I remember thinking about dinner. About whether I'd forgotten to reply to a message. Normal thoughts, normal routine. If something changed, it wasn't obvious. At least not yet. I noticed him only because he didn't look away. He wasn't staring, that's what made it strange. His eyes just stayed where they were. Steady and unbothered, like he had no reason to pretend I wasn't there. Mid-30s maybe, dark jacket. No headphones, hands empty. He stood a few feet away, close enough to feel present, without being close enough to feel intentional. When the train slowed, our reflections lined up in the window. For a second, his eyes met mine through the glass, layered over the tunnel lights rushing past. It felt accidental, like bumping into someone in a hallway. I looked down first, a reflex. By the time I glanced back, he was already facing forward. Attention returned to nothing in particular. Just another commuter, just another man I wouldn't remember tomorrow. I told myself that was the end of it. My apartment was too quiet when I got home. It always is, but that night, the silence felt heavier, like it had been waiting for me. I dropped my bag by the door and scrolled on my phone to avoid thinking. Somewhere between apps, I ended up on Craigslist. I don't know why, maybe boredom, maybe habit. I clicked into missed connections and started reading posts that felt half sincere, half performative. People describing glances like they were destiny. I laughed softly to myself and typed without thinking. You were on the train tonight? Blue line. Probably nothing. I just thought I'd try. I stared at it for a long moment. No descriptions, no specifics. Just enough to feel real without feeling risky. I almost deleted it. Almost. When I hit post, it felt like tossing a note into the dark. My phone vibrating woke me at 2:14. One reply. For a second, I felt a flicker of excitement, the kind you regret immediately. I told myself it was harmless. Cities are full of night owls. People check their phones at night. Nothing about this meant anything. The message was short, polite.
I was wondering if you'd write.
No greeting, no question. Just that. I read it over and over, my chest tightening in a way I couldn't explain. The words felt heavier than they should have, like they were responding to something unspoken. I locked my phone, then unlocked it again. I checked my post, suddenly aware of how little I'd said. Anyone could have written that. Anyone could have guessed. That should have been reassuring, but it wasn't. I didn't answer right away. I reread my post, scanning it like evidence, trying to see what I might have given away without realizing it. Nothing. No time. No description. No proof it was me. Another message came in.
You stood near the middle doors.
My stomach dipped. That still wasn't impossible, then.
Green backpack. You shifted your weight when the train lurched.
I sat up in bed. The room felt suddenly too exposed, like the walls had thinned. My backpack was green. I remembered the jolt, the way the train jerked, and I braced without thinking. I typed back, something light, something dismissive. A test. A lot of people have green backpacks. I stared at the screen, waiting. The reply came instantly.
Yours has a tear on the left strap. You kept touching it.
My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a sharp crack. The sound echoed too loudly in my small apartment. I stood there for a second, heart racing, before crouching to pick it up. My hands were shaking. I flexed my fingers like that might help. I hadn't noticed myself touching the strap. I hadn't noticed anything about myself at all. I tried to remember the platform, the faces, the space between bodies. Had he been closer than I thought? Had he brushed past me? Another message appeared before I could answer.
You sighed when the doors jammed. You said, "Of course," under your breath.
I hadn't realized I'd spoken. That was worse than being seen. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone warm in my palm, listening to the building settle around me. Pipes sticking, a distant elevator, someone's TV murmuring through a wall. Sounds I'd always found comforting, now felt intrusive. I checked his username, generic, no history, no other posts, just my listing. Like it existed solely for this conversation. I typed the obvious question. How do you know all that? The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, appeared again. I watched it like it might tell me something about him. Hesitation, uncertainty, anything human. The reply finally came.
Because I was paying attention.
It wasn't threatening. It wasn't defensive. It was matter of fact. Like explaining the weather. Another message followed unprompted.
You didn't look scared on the platform.
I felt a cold ripple move through me.
Just tired.
I looked toward my front door, suddenly aware of how thin it was. How easily sound traveled in this building. I hadn't told him where I lived. I hadn't told him anything beyond what was already visible to anyone passing by. My phone vibrated again.
You got off 3 stops from Union Station.
I stared at the words until they blurred. The realization settled slowly, heavily, like something lowering itself into place. I tried to reason it away. Maybe he'd guessed. Maybe he was bluffing. Maybe I'd mentioned something, without realizing it. But the logic felt thin, stretched too tight to hold. I stood and walked to the window, careful not to turn on the light. Far below, a train screamed along the tracks, sparks flashing briefly against the dark. My phone buzzed again.
I'm not the one you thought you noticed.
I reread it 3 times. The implication landed quietly, but it landed hard. He hadn't been answering the missed connection. He'd been answering me. Answering the act of posting itself. My throat felt dry. I realized I'd been holding my breath without noticing. I didn't reply. I didn't delete the messages either. I just sat there, phone in my lap, trying to understand. When does noticing someone turn into an invitation? Outside, the city kept moving. Cars passed. Somewhere, someone laughed. Normal life continuing without me. The screen eventually went dark, but I could still feel the weight of his attention. Like it had followed me home, and settled in quietly. I thought about the missed connection. How harmless it had felt. How small. Just words tossed into the void. I finally understood what I'd done. I hadn't been looking for someone. I'd been announcing myself. And, somewhere out there, a man who paid attention had heard me. I slept badly after that. Not because I expected something to happen, but because nothing did. No knock, no footsteps outside my door. Just the slow, deliberate ticking of hours passing. When I woke, my phone was face down on the nightstand, exactly where I'd left it. But the silence around it felt charged, like it was waiting to be disturbed. I checked Craigslist before I checked my messages. I don't know why. Habit maybe, or dread, dressed up as curiosity. My missed connection was still there. Same text, same times, no edits. That relief came too quickly. It felt unearned. Then, my phone buzzed.
You reread your post twice this morning.
I stared at the message until my vision blurred. I had reread it. I remembered doing it standing barefoot in my kitchen, coffee going cold on the counter. I hadn't told him that. I hadn't told anyone. I typed back, slowly, choosing each word like it might set off something fragile. You don't know what I do. The reply came a minute later.
You check reflections when you're nervous. Glass, screens, windows.
I felt exposed, in a way that had nothing to do with location. He wasn't describing where I was. He was describing how I was. I opened the missed connections page again. My post was still visible, but something felt off. The wording looked slightly wrong. Not incorrect, just unfamiliar. Like rereading a journal entry you don't remember writing. I refreshed the page. The text shifted back to how I remembered it. My hands were cold as I closed the browser. At work, I couldn't focus. Every sound felt deliberate. Footsteps behind me, someone clearing their throat, my reflection in the darkened monitor. I told myself I was being dramatic. That anxiety had a way of filling in blanks that didn't need filling. My phone stayed quiet until lunchtime.
You didn't bring the green backpack today.
My chest tightened. I hadn't. I'd switched bags because the strap was tearing further. That wasn't something he could have seen.
You've thought about throwing it away, but you didn't.
I locked my phone and stood up too fast, chairs scraping loudly against the floor. People looked. I smiled, apologetic, normal. Inside, something brittle began to crack. I wasn't being watched in moments. I was being tracked in patterns. I went home early. I didn't ride the train. I walked, taking longer routes, cutting through busier streets. If he was watching, I wanted witnesses. At home, I checked my listing again. This time, it had comments. Replies I hadn't seen before. Reference to missed connections written about me. Descriptions that felt too intimate to be coincidence.
You wore your hair up like armor. You pretend not to notice when men look too long.
The timestamps went back weeks, months, before I'd ever posted anything. My phone buzzed.
You're seeing them now.
I sat down hard on the couch, pulse hammering in my ears. These posts, they hadn't been posted for me. They'd been kept until I was ready to see them. Not written in response to me. Written for the moment I'd notice. I tried to confront him. I needed to believe he'd slip, that he'd reveal something human. Why are you doing this? The reply came, slower this time.
Because you asked.
I stared at the words. Anger flaring, hot and sudden. I didn't ask for this. The typing bubble lingered.
You asked to be noticed. Most people don't.
I wanted to scream at the screen, to tell him how wrong he was. How twisted that logic sounded. But underneath the anger was something worse. Doubt. Had I wanted to be noticed? Had the post been loneliness, pretending to be curiosity? The thought made my stomach churn. That night, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I stood just inside my apartment, listening. Nothing, no movement, no breathing but my own. My phone vibrated.
You're standing by the door.
I froze.
You didn't turn on the light.
He continued.
You're listening.
I dropped my bag and backed into the wall, heart slamming painfully against my ribs. Stop, I typed. This isn't funny. The reply came immediately.
I'm not laughing.
I slid down to the floor, breath shallow, trying to make myself smaller in a room I suddenly didn't trust. I checked the locks again, and again. The ritual didn't calm me, it just confirmed how little control I felt I had. I opened Craigslist with shaking hands. My account settings were unchanged. No login alerts, no unfamiliar devices. According to the site, nothing was wrong. Except, a new post had appeared, under my username. I hadn't written it. It was short. Still riding the train. Still watching. I deleted it immediately. My phone buzzed as the page refreshed.
You don't need to erase it.
He wrote.
It's already been read.
My throat tightened. Read by who? The pause before his answer felt deliberate.
By people who understand invitations.
I stopped responding. I needed space, distance, something solid to hold on to. I turned my phone face down and sat there until my breathing slowed. When I finally looked again, there was a photo waiting, taken from across the tracks. Morning light, empty platform. Me, standing near the middle doors. But the timestamp was wrong. It says the photo was taken tomorrow morning. I felt dizzy, like the floor had shifted beneath me. This isn't real, I typed. The reply was gentle.
It will be.
I realized then that he wasn't predicting my behavior. He was assuming it. And I didn't know how to prove him wrong. I didn't sleep. I watched the sky lighten from black to gray, every sound amplified by exhaustion. I drafted a message I never sent. A warning, a plea, an explanation. Nothing felt right. Another message appeared instead.
You're thinking about deleting everything.
It's true.
But you won't. You'll want to know if I keep talking.
That one hurt. Because it was true. Fear had tangled itself with curiosity, and I hated myself for it. I understood now what he meant when he said he'd been paying attention. He wasn't just watching me move through space. He was watching me choose. The sun finally rose, the city woke up, life resumed its normal rhythm, indifferent to whatever was unraveling inside me. My phone buzzed one last time, before I left the apartment.
Same train today.
It wasn't a question. I stood by the door, keys in my hand, heart pounding, wondering when my routine had stopped being mine. I realized then what terrified me most. Not that he knew where I went, but that he knew I might still go. And that, somewhere between posting and reading and replying, I had taught him exactly how to reach me. Would you still have posted it if you knew what answering would cost you? I didn't take the train that morning. Not out of fear, not exactly. It was something quieter than that. A decision. For the first time since this started, I didn't want to react. I wanted to choose. I stood on the platform, for a minute anyway. Long enough to feel the pull of routine tug at me. The doors opened, people stepped on. The familiar rhythm waited to swallow me whole. I imagined my phone buzzing the moment I crossed the threshold. Instead, I turned around. Across the street from the station was a cafe I'd passed 100 times without entering. Bright windows, too many tables, too public to be interesting. I ordered coffee and sat where I could see the entrance. My reflection faint in the glass. I didn't feel brave, I felt tired. But clarity has a way of sneaking in when panic runs out of fuel. And for the first time, I understood something important. Whatever power he had, only existed when I was alone with it. I opened Craigslist with steady hands. Not scrolling, not hesitating. Writing. The post wasn't emotional. It wasn't lonely. I didn't explain myself or soften the edges. I stripped it down to facts the way he always had. Blue line metal doors. You noticed how I pause before stepping on. If you're the one who's been paying attention, meet me today, 11:30 a.m., cafe across from the station. No vulnerability, no invitation, just coordinates. I read it once, then again. It sounded nothing like me, and that felt right. I posted it and locked my phone. I didn't wait for a reply. Instead, I texted a friend, someone practical, someone who would sit nearby without asking questions. She arrived 10 minutes later, laptop open, headphones in, pretending not to know me. People moved around us, cups clink, a door chimed open and shut. Cameras watched the room without caring why. The movement of the city, exactly as it should be. If he wanted attention, he could have it. Just not privately. 11:30 came and went. I wondered if I'd been wrong. If I'd imagined the confidence in his messages. If this was all going to collapse into embarrassment and coffee breath. And a story I'd never tell anyone. Then, at 11:37, the door opened again. He didn't stride in. He hesitated. Mid-30s, dark jacket, no headphones, empty hands. Just a man. Scanning the room too carefully, eyes skipping faces, instead of settling. He stood near the entrance longer than necessary. Like he was waiting for instructions that weren't coming. That was the first shock. He looked smaller than the voice I'd been carrying around in my head. Less certain. Almost exposed. He spotted me because I didn't look away. Our eyes met cleanly this time. No glass, no reflections, no layered distance. Just recognition. His surprise flashing before he could mask it. To see my calm settling into place. He smiled. Polite and practiced. He didn't sit, didn't speak. For the first time since he set his eyes on me. He cannot assume anything. I felt the shift immediately. Without screens. Without the ability to narrate me from a distance. He had nothing to lean on. The confidence in his messages had depended on control. On knowing more than I did. On watching, without being watched back. Here, he couldn't be sure of anything. People could hear us. People could see us. People could misunderstand us. And that scared him. He took a step closer, uncertain, rather than threatening. Close enough that I could smell coffee on his breath. Close enough to remind me he was real. Ordinary. That was the second crack. I stood up, slowly. Didn't ask his name. Didn't confront him. Didn't give him a line to respond to. I just stood there, meeting his eyes. Letting the silence stretch, until it stopped belonging to me. Then I walked past him. Close enough to feel him flinch. And I kept walking. My phone buzzed as I reached the door. One message, from the same unknown number.
He didn't have to do that.
I stared at the screen for a long moment. It wasn't anger. It wasn't threat. It was loss. Control slipping. Attention redirected. Power dissolving, the moment it was shared with daylight. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. I put my phone in my bag, and walked out, into the noise of the street, where no one cared who noticed whom. Nothing happened after that. No confrontation, no confession, no dramatic unraveling. The messages stopped. The missed connections thread went quiet. And for the first time, The silence didn't feel like waiting. It felt like something ending. Weeks passed. I rode the train again. Not the same time, not the same carriage, but enough to remind myself it still belonged to me. My phone stayed quiet. No observations, no predictions. Once I thought I saw him, across the platform. Same jacket, same posture, head bent toward his phone like everyone else, but he didn't look up. I realized then that whatever he'd been doing required permission. Not consent, but access. The quiet agreement that I would keep answering, keep reacting, keep feeding the loop. I hadn't broken him. I'd simply starved the pattern. Attention only becomes power once it's answered. I stopped thinking in terms of safety and started thinking in terms of visibility. What did I offer the world by default? What patterns did I give away without noticing? I changed small things. Shoes, timing, routes. Not to disappear, just to blur. Inconsistency became a boundary. The internet lost interest quickly after that. No more posts written in my voice. No more echoes, pretending to be coincidence. I learned to sit with uncertainty, without trying to solve it. That was harder than fear. Fear wants action. Uncertainty wants restraint. And restraint, I learned, is quieter than panic, but far stronger. Months later, I found my original missed connection post, archived somewhere deep online. People debated it like folklore. About intention, about blame, about whether noticing someone could ever be neutral. I didn't correct them. Urban legends don't need accuracy. They need participation. A newer missed connection appeared beneath it. Different city, same cadence, same illusion of intimacy. I read it once, then closed the page. Some lessons can't be taught ahead of time. I hadn't listened either. The danger was never being seen. It was believing that attention required something in return. I still watch reflections now and then. Not for who might be watching me, but for the moment I start looking too closely at someone else. The moment entitlement tries to disguise itself as curiosity. I've learned to step back before noticing turns into permission. Every so often, my phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number. Vague, observational, almost admiring. I delete them without reading. That's the boundary. Not silence. Choice. I never found out if it was just one man, and I don't think it matters. Platforms don't create monsters. They teach people how to practice being one. Quietly, convincingly, with plausible deniability. The scariest part wasn't being watched. It was realizing how easily attention gets reframed as intimacy. How quickly observation turns into entitlement when no one pushes back. So if you're thinking about posting a missed connection post, ask yourself why. Ask what you're really offering. Because once you announce yourself, someone who pays attention might answer. And they won't always be the person you noticed. Attention is a door. You decide who gets to open it.